I am Bree, 32 years old, and I have a small family with my husband Charles and our 5-year-old daughter Ashley. My family lives in Houston, the largest and most bustling city in Texas. I used to think I was lucky because I had everything that any woman could ever wish for, until it was December 3 years ago, the most beautiful time of the year. The streets of Houston were adorned with the beauty of winter. The roadside cafes emitted a strong, inviting aroma, Christmas trees sparkled, and the decorations were lit up in a variety of colors, a vibrant and lively picture, bringing a warm feeling amidst the cold atmosphere. The whole city was immersed in joy as people exchanged well wishes, ready to welcome a new year full of hope and blessings. My family was immersed in the festive atmosphere, and we decided to go shopping at Sam's Club, one of our family's favorite spots. As we entered the store, the sparkling lights and Christmas decorations everywhere made the atmosphere even more lively. My daughter held my hand tightly, her eyes lighting up as she saw the large gift boxes and the sparkling Christmas tree. My husband happily selected the items we needed for the family, occasionally turning around to smile at me and our daughter. We split up to browse the aisles, looking for decorations to beautify our home and finding surprise gifts for each other. Ashley was happy to choose a gift that she loved. Once we had bought all the necessary items, my daughter and I went to the checkout area to wait for Charles. But nearly 20 minutes had passed, and he still hadn't shown up. I called Charles several times on my phone, but he didn't answer. We patiently waited for another 20 minutes, but my daughter and I began to get anxious. It was time for me to start preparing dinner, and Ashley was getting frustrated and starting to cry. I had to ask the customer service to make an announcement over the loudspeaker to help find Charles. After a few minutes, he appeared with 2 shopping carts, one filled with colorful gifts and sweets. The other cart was filled with items like a chainsaw, bleach, soap, and deodorant spray. I was surprised and asked Charles the purpose of buying these items. My husband, looking tired, said that he wanted to repair a few windows and the door in the basement. I was even more surprised because Charles had never shown interest in or done tasks like that before. He would rather spend the money to hire a repair team to come to the house and use that time to be with our daughter or play sports. But I didn't worry much anymore. Charles knowing how to take care of the house was a good thing. It took us quite a while to bring everything we bought back home. That evening, I suggested ordering takeout since it was getting late, but Charles said he wanted to have grilled meat. Although I explained that grilling meat would take a lot of time to prepare, Charles still wanted to have his favorite dish made by me. I was convinced and quickly started cooking. Charles said he would take the opportunity to repair the basement door while waiting for dinner. I told my daughter to play in the living room or in areas where I could keep an eye on her. So our family of 3 each had a different task to do. I focused on cooking, occasionally hearing the faint sound of the chainsaw and the sound of my daughter singing to herself. The house was quickly filled with the aroma of the grilled meat. I called out loudly to announce that dinner was ready, but there was no response from my husband or daughter. I walked to the living room, then changed direction toward the stairs leading down to the basement, calling out for Charles and Ashley as I went. When I was just a few steps away from the first step of the stairs leading down, Charles suddenly rushed up from below, holding Ashley in his arms and shouting loudly, which startled me. Charles's face was covered in sweat, and his eyes were filled with worry, barely concealing his panic. Charles staggered, barely managing to stop at the top of the stairs, his body tensed, as if he were fleeing from something. Seeing my surprise, Charles seemed a bit flustered for a moment, before he held up Ashley's hand. She had injured her finger, and there was quite a bit of blood. Charles and I hurriedly took her upstairs. After treating Ashley's wound, the whole family had dinner together. Charles explained that Ashley had followed him down to the basement, and he blamed himself for not keeping an eye on her. When Charles realized what had happened, he immediately took Ashley upstairs, but didn't hear my calls. "Mom, my hand doesn't hurt at all." Ashley turned to look at me with her innocent eyes. I smiled and gently kissed my daughter's bandaged hand. Charles told my daughter and me not to go down to the basement because it was messy and dangerous. I agreed, and then gave Ashley a thorough reminder. 2 days later was New Year's Day, and I happily prepared the traditional dishes for the special occasion. After finishing the repairs on the basement door and the windows in the house, Charles helped me clean up and decorate the dinner table. Since our family only had 3 people, everything was done quickly and efficiently. The dinner table was set warmly, and Charles expressed his gratitude for the care I always give to our little family. His wish for the new year was to have a 4th member join us. I was moved and hugged my husband. He pulled Ashley close, and we embraced each other tightly. Suddenly, Charles's phone rang, and he left to answer it. Ashley turned to look at me and expressed her wish for me to get another plate instead of cutlery. I smiled and told my daughter that the baby hadn't arrived yet, and for now, our family only had 3 members. "No, Mom, there's also the lady in the basement. I saw Dad and her. Our family has 4 people." I was utterly confused, looking at my daughter and then toward Charles, who was standing far away, talking on the phone. A cold shiver ran down my spine. We had a happy life, and I trusted him completely. Yet now, how could this be happening? Ashley approached and placed her small hands on my cheek, her innocent eyes examining me. I held back my tears, taking her small hand in mine. I was surprised to see that Ashley had removed the bandage from her wound at some point. There were no signs of any injury. Her hand was completely healed. I looked straight into my daughter's eyes and whispered, asking her about what she had seen in the basement. That woman was sleeping on the floor, and then Dad shoved her hands and legs into the box. "My hand isn't injured. Dad doesn't let me answer when you called." A feeling of panic surged within me, like a wave, sweeping everything away. Everything I had once believed in, all the happy memories, now shattered before my eyes, leaving only an indescribable fear.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
Hearing Charles say goodbye to his business partner before hanging up, I quickly told Ashley that this would be our secret and she must not tell her father. She smiled and nodded just as Charles returned to the dining table, kissed both of us on the forehead, and happily began his meal. Looking at the man in front of me, feelings of doubt and fear surged within me exponentially. I will definitely find out everything. The house sank into an eerie silence after the New Year's party. Ashley was fast asleep, her eyes shut tight, her innocent face unaware of the turmoil within me. I sat alone in the living room, my mind spinning with the innocent yet chilling words from my daughter. She's sleeping on the floor, her hands and feet placed in the box. What's Charles hiding? What is lying in the basement? I looked towards the door leading down there, my heart pounding rapidly, my breath heavy. That night, after Charles had gone to bed, I waited until his steady breathing filled the room before deciding to take action. I quietly stood up, each step so light, as if afraid the floor would make a sound. The basement was always locked, but I had taken the key from Charles's coat pocket. My hands trembled as I opened the basement door, a cold gust of air rushing straight into my face. I raised my phone and turned on the flashlight. Each old wooden step creaked under my feet. The faint light from the flashlight swept through every corner, illuminating the damp walls covered in cobwebs. A foul, rancid smell lingered, causing my stomach to tighten in disgust. I looked more closely and noticed wooden boxes stacked haphazardly in a corner. Dark red stains were splattered on the floor, as if someone had tried to clean them, but couldn't quite erase them. When the flashlight beam landed on a large open box, I stopped. My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest when I saw a light blue floral dress draped over the edge of the box. It was wrinkled and covered in mud. Beneath it were long, jet-black strands of hair. I stepped back, my hands trembling, unable to believe my eyes. She was lying asleep on the floor. Ashley's words echoed in my head, making me even more panicked. I forced myself to go back to the bedroom. That entire night I stayed awake, lying next to Charles, but my heart was filled with unfamiliarity and fear. The next morning, when Charles was getting ready to leave for work, I tried to act normal, but my eyes couldn't hide the daze. As soon as Charles closed the door and stepped outside, I immediately called the police. I had no other choice. The feeling of fear and doubt had become more than I could bear. The police arrived with the forensic team. The basement was quickly sealed off. The whole house seemed to be immersed in the footsteps and voices of strangers. I held Ashley as she sat on the sofa, and she occasionally mumbled about her being in the basement. The police chief approached, his cold eyes staring at me. "Bree, we have found a body." I almost collapsed. The woman in Ashley's story was real. The police chief continued speaking, but every sound seemed to fade away in my mind. My whole body was numb, and my heart was pounding erratically. I looked at Ashley. She was holding a small doll tightly in her hand, her gaze still innocent, but her words now echoed in my mind. I was asked to stay in the living room while the police searched every corner of the basement. The sound of footsteps, the clinking of metal tools against the cold concrete floor, and the occasional heavy breathing echoed through the house. The smell of bleach wafting up from the basement made me feel nauseous, but I couldn't take my eyes off the door leading down to it. A little while later, a young police officer stepped up, his face pale. He exchanged a few whispered words with the police chief. His cold eyes were now fixed on me. "Ms. Bree, we need to ask you to come to the station for a statement." His voice was deep but firm. I nodded, my legs feeling like they had lost all sensation. I tried to keep Ashley close, the fear that she would be caught up in something terrible overwhelming me. As we were taken out of the house, the harsh sunlight highlighted the police cars with their flashing lights, and the neighbors stood in groups, pointing and gossiping. At the police station, I was seated in a small room. A female police officer gently asked me about my relationship with Charles, his recent habits, and anything unusual I had noticed. It turned out that everything I had once thought was happiness was just a perfect mask that Charles had built. Meanwhile, Charles was escorted into another interrogation room. They showed me the surveillance footage. He sat there, his head lowered, his face dotted with sweat, and his eyes like someone pushed to the brink. His first words were like a confession. He admitted to having an affair. Charles stated that a few months ago, when his business was facing difficulties, he sought out a young woman who worked at a bar to relieve his stress. At first, it was just secret meetings, but the relationship quickly spiraled out of control. The woman began demanding more, even threatening to expose the affair if he didn't comply. That night, in a drunken stupor and under the influence of drugs, Charles arranged to meet her at a hotel to settle everything. But the meeting turned into a heated argument. In the heat of the moment, Charles became a killer. When he realized what he had just done, he panicked, not knowing how to handle the situation. In that desperate situation, a disgusting thought arose. Charles decided to bring the body home, to destroy it by dividing it into parts and storing it in wooden boxes in the basement. Charles chose that place because he thought that neither I nor Ashley would ever go down there. But what he didn't expect was that Ashley had secretly followed him and witnessed everything. I cupped my face, a feeling of disgust overwhelming me, not just for Charles, but for myself as well, for having lived with such a person all these years. The memories that once seemed happy were now shrouded in a terrifying dark veil. Charles was arrested, then charged with first-degree murder, and faced a life sentence. The house, once my home, became the scene of a horrific crime, forever unable to be returned to. I decided to move in with my sister in another city to start a new life. Every evening, I sit beside Ashley, watching her face as she sleeps peacefully, telling myself that I will never let her remember what happened. But I knew well that no matter how far I ran, the darkness of the past would haunt me forever.
My name is Emma, and I'm 27 years old. It sounds completely ridiculous, but I just ended my marriage because of a diaper. I am being dead serious. 8 months ago, I was living happily with my husband, Michael, in Austin, Texas. Our life was comfortable. We had just welcomed our first son, Noah, 3 months prior. Those first few months of parenthood were exhausting. Noah cried a lot in the middle of the night. But Michael was an amazing father. Even though he worked 10 hours a day, he was always happy to help me with the baby. I thought I was so lucky to have a man like him. Things started getting weird when I noticed Michael would disappear at night. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe he just needed some fresh air. But then it started happening almost every night. Around 2 in the morning, he would quietly slip out of bed. He would be gone for about 15 minutes, and then return to bed breathing heavily, looking strangely satisfied. I started to get suspicious. Was he seeing someone? Was he having an affair? I checked his phone several times when he wasn't looking, but I found absolutely nothing. I kept my doubts to myself, not knowing how to bring it up to him, until that one night. Around 2 a.m., Noah woke up screaming. I was exhausted, so I asked Michael to go soothe him. But the baby kept crying. When I opened my eyes, I realized my husband wasn't even in the room. I picked Noah up to go find him. As I walked past the window, I looked down into the backyard where we keep the trash cans. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, I saw Michael. He wasn't on the phone, and he wasn't meeting anyone. He was standing by the trash bin, digging through the plastic bags full of Noah's dirty diapers. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Michael pulled out a diaper and opened it up. It was a heavy diaper, one with poop in it. He held it right up to his nose, closed his eyes, and took a deep, long breath. The yard light hit his face, revealing a huge, blissful, and happy smile. He stood there inhaling that stench intensely, as if he were smelling expensive perfume or some kind of drug. My stomach turned over. Seeing my respectable husband, the perfect father to my child, indulging in something so perverted in the trash, made me shake so hard I could barely stand. After a moment, I snapped out of it and hurried to put Noah back in his crib. When I looked back outside, Michael was gone. I rushed to bed and pretended to be asleep. A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Michael sneaked back in and crawled into bed next to me. I stayed still, trying to breathe steadily like I was in a deep sleep. From that night on, I couldn't sleep anymore. Fear and confusion kept me awake every night. I would lie there waiting, and every night, Michael repeated the exact same routine. Sneaking out, digging through the trash, and coming back like nothing happened. I needed proof to make sure I wasn't hallucinating or going crazy. So, I started filming him. I took photos and gathered over a dozen videos from the window. One night, I waited for him to come back from the yard. As soon as he got into bed, I flipped on the light. He jumped, looking at me with terrified eyes. I felt a wave of disgust and anger when I saw a faint yellow smudge still near his nose. "Where have you been for so long?" I asked. "Oh, I was just hungry, getting a snack," he said. He smiled and leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I pulled away instantly. I didn't say a word. I just opened a video on my phone and turned the screen toward him. Michael's face went from shocked to deathly pale, and finally to a scary, blank stare. "Explain this to me, Michael. What are you doing?" "Nothing. I was just cleaning up." The argument lasted until dawn. Michael wasn't sorry at all. He looked down at his feet for a long time and then said something that made my blood run cold. "You can't and will never understand. It's a need deep inside me that I can't control. You have no right to judge me." When I started crying and asked if this was some kind of twisted sexual fetish, he didn't deny it. Instead, he flew into a rage. He started throwing things and screaming that I was narrow-minded and that my judgment was the reason he could never be honest with me. That very night, he packed a bag and left for his brother's house. I thought he just needed time to think. I expected him to come back and apologize, or at least agree to go to therapy for Noah's sake. But he didn't. Just one day later, Michael called me with the coldest voice I've ever heard. "Emma, I want a divorce. My lawyer will be in touch." Every effort I made to save our marriage and every suggestion for mental health treatment was flatly rejected. He chose to protect his perversion over protecting his family. On the day we signed the divorce papers, I looked at the man who used to be my whole world and saw a terrifying stranger. I felt so much shame. When my mother asked why our happy family fell apart so fast, I could only hang my head and say, we had irreconcilable differences. How could I ever tell her the disgusting truth without feeling humiliated? I moved back in with my parents after the divorce was finalized. I look back at those last few months like a total nightmare. I tell myself to stay positive and forget the bad parts. I have to put my son's safety and well-being first. Noah deserves to grow up in a healthy environment. I deserve a better life too. And for my son, I will be strong.
I'm Lila, a 17-year-old high school junior. During PE class that day, I was standing at the end of the court when a basketball flew straight at my face with a lot of force. I fell backward, holding my face while the sound of the whole class laughing echoed around me. I felt a burning pain in my left eye, and tears streamed out non-stop. Then I saw Alex run over to pick up the ball. He gave me a totally indifferent look, then shrugged and smirked before turning and running off. He just kept playing ball like nothing had happened. The school nurse gave me an ice pack and told me I should probably go home early. I called my dad to pick me up. Dad talked with my homeroom teacher for a bit while I waited in the car. I looked at my face in the mirror and saw a bruise forming around my eye. At that moment, I felt incredible pain and intense anger. I remembered the basketball game from a month ago. I'd confessed my feelings to Alex right after the game. I'd been quietly crushing on him for over a year. The result was that he rejected me without even thinking for a second. "Honestly, you're just not my type," he'd said. From then on, I officially became the school's running joke. That evening, my best friend Chloe video called me to check in. "I know he did it on purpose. He didn't look guilty at all." "Do you want revenge?" "What do you mean?" Chloe told me about an old story her grandma used to tell, the curse of the upside-down Christmas tree. The curse involved the dark Santa, an entity opposite to the regular Santa Claus, who would grant curses instead of good wishes. The person performing the ritual had to write the curse on paper, put it in a stocking, and hang it on a Christmas tree that had been turned upside down. That sounds like something from a kid's ghost story. Just try it. It's a way to vent your anger, that's all. After hanging up, I looked at the small Christmas tree in my room. Dad had bought it for me to decorate my space. I grabbed a blank piece of paper, took a pen, and started writing. At first, I was going to write harmless things, like, I wish Alex would apologize to me, or I wish Alex would get detention during PE. But as I recalled how he had rejected me and made me feel so embarrassed, plus that smirk and shrug, I gripped the pen tightly and quickly wrote the line, Alex is a cursed jerk. I wish he would disappear from this world. I stuffed the paper into a red Christmas stocking, then flipped the small tree in my room upside down, found a way to secure it, and hung the stocking on the base of the tree. The whole scene looked weird, and my actions felt a little silly, but I felt a little lighter, as if I'd vented some of my anger. Of course, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. It was just a stupid way to cope. I video called Chloe to show her what I'd done. We both burst into giggles, totally amused. Christmas passed quietly. I was really happy because I got some thoughtful gifts. The day I went back to school, I felt a completely different atmosphere. Students were gathered in small groups, whispering about something. I met Chloe by our locker. Her face was pale. Lila, have you heard the news? I asked blankly, and Chloe swallowed hard. Alex is missing. His family reported to the police that he vanished on Christmas Eve. The world spun around me. The curse, the upside-down tree, the dark Santa. Could all the things I thought were a joke actually be true? No. No way. I stared at Chloe with a look of panic. What am I supposed to do now? I had wished for Alex to disappear, and now he was gone. All day, I couldn't focus on anything. The other students kept discussing Alex. The police had even come to investigate. I sat at my desk, hands shaking, feeling guilt crush my heart moment by moment. When I got home, I rushed straight to my room and ripped the stocking down from the upside-down tree. I tore up the paper with the wish on it. I silently prayed that the curse would be reversed by doing that. I sank onto the floor, holding my head and crying. I was truly terrified. My dad knocked and walked in. Honey, what's wrong? I cried and hugged him tightly. Alex really disappeared, Dad. Dad looked at me for a moment. His eyes became cold. He put his hand on my shoulder and smiled. The dark Santa heard your wish and granted it. I was stunned by Dad's calm attitude. And why did he know about the curse I wrote? I backed away, unable to tear my eyes from the vague smile on his face. The air in the room grew heavy. My body trembled with fear and shock. Dad looked at me. You don't need to be afraid. The people who hurt you will disappear one by one. I am Stacy, 31 years old. People around me think my life's pretty great. They think I'm a lucky, happy woman with a talented husband, a sweet daughter, and a pretty comfortable life. It's true I've got all that, but that's just what people on the outside see. What I really miss and want is Julian's care and loyalty. Ever since my daughter Melody was less than a year old, we've been having non-stop fights and disagreements we just couldn't work out. He didn't look at me the way he used to. Those affectionate looks and loving words have slowly turned into cold emptiness. Because of my bad health and a heart transplant I had when I was young, I stay home and rely totally on Julian. I know my husband's cheating on me. The signs couldn't be more obvious. Random phone calls, sketchy appointments, and especially the way his attitude has changed. But I just couldn't say it, couldn't face the truth. I was just scared of ending up with a broken family, so I didn't want to ruin the perfect picture I had built. But putting up with it just meant suffering. When I asked him about the affair, instead of feeling sorry or ashamed, Julian just got insanely angry. It felt like both my body and soul were getting torn apart. It was time to stop living this fake life and face the truth once and for all. I filed for divorce and left with my daughter that night. I went back to where I used to live as a kid, in this quiet little town, almost a 4-hour drive from my place now. When I was young, I was a happy girl, loving the comfortable life my parents worked so hard to give me. But then one day, my parents just vanished, disappeared from this world without a trace. I was adopted by my grandma, and the house has been empty ever since. I looked at Melody sleeping peacefully in the back seat and couldn't stop the tears from falling. My family split up when I was 10, and now that Melody's 10, I couldn't give her the complete family I wanted. We finally got there at 4 a.m. The house stood there in the dark, in the middle of this empty town, far from the rest of the neighborhood, so lonely, like it had been forgotten by time and people. I carried Melody into the house, reached for the light switch, and the bulb flickered for a few seconds before finally lighting up. The furniture was covered in big white sheets that seemed to appear and disappear under the light, making me shiver without meaning to. I turned on a few more lights around the house, and luckily, they were still working. Joe must have been keeping everything in good shape for the past 20 years. I took Melody to my room the night before and quickly passed out after all those hours of driving. The next morning, I was suddenly jolted awake by a noise coming from downstairs. I didn't know where Melody went, so I quickly ran around, yelling her name. At the end of the hallway, I got startled again when I saw a little girl wearing a mini mask. I thought it was Melody, so I called her name loudly, kinda annoyed. But instead of coming to me, she turned and ran off fast. I ran after her, but by the time I got to the end of the hallway, she was gone. I quickly looked around, ran downstairs, and threw open the door. Surprisingly, Melody was out in the garden with Joe. When she saw me, Melody happily called out, "Mom!" and held up the flowers she was holding. I let out a big sigh of relief, then got mad and went up to scold her. Melody, teary-eyed, explained that she'd been with Joe the whole time and hadn't touched any mini masks. Anyway, Melody was here, so I'd deal with that later. I turned to say hi to Joe. 20 years ago, he was our housekeeper, and he still is. He was replanting the flower beds when he heard I was moving back here. "Stacy, are you sure you want to move back here? Just you and Melody?" I looked at Joe for a second and then confidently told him my decision. Joe didn't show much emotion, just said he'd send some workers to fix up the house. I think he was worried about just the two of us in such a big house. Joe's always been so caring. Looking at him, I felt bad for how gentle and lonely he seemed. I thought about Michelle, his daughter. Michelle and I used to be best friends. We grew up together in this villa, and those days were so happy. But then Michelle just disappeared, leaving Joe with nothing but longing and pain. I gave him a hug and said a heartfelt thank you. Looking back, I realized just how cruel time can be. The white walls had faded and were covered with this ugly black moss. The roof tiles were all uneven and broken. Some of the windows were shattered. The wooden frames were moldy, and some had big cracks, letting cold winds blow into the house like ghostly breaths. The house was surrounded by a wild garden, with trees growing everywhere. The flower beds that used to be well taken care of were now full of weeds, and the wooden fences were all rotten and rusty from the weather. The paved paths in the yard, which used to be solid and clean, were now covered in green moss. The air around the house felt heavy, with a musty smell mixed with damp soil and rotting leaves, making everything feel even gloomier. It would take a while to sort everything out, but it'd be okay. I went inside, checked the stove to make sure it was working, and then happily told Melody we should head to the supermarket to grab some cooking supplies and make the kitchen feel cozier. I would make delicious dishes for Melody, just like my mom used to make for me. A little cleaning will make cooking way easier. The mom and daughter started cleaning up. I had Melody wipe down the kitchen counter, always showing her what to do and asking her to help with small tasks she could handle. The kitchen utensils were all still here, and the pots and pans my mom used were still around, but the knife set was almost completely gone. The drawer had small brown paint stains, like it had been cleaned but not very carefully. I couldn't remember when those stains showed up. "Mom!" Melody called out to me. I turned around and saw her standing in front of the oven, looking all confused. I started walking over, about to look down, when Joe called out loudly. He brought in the cleaning and repair crew and needed my daughter and me to get out of the way so they could work. I agreed and took Melody away, but she seemed unsure, looked at me with teary eyes, and suddenly started crying. I comforted her and waited until she calmed down, then asked her why she was acting like that. But Melody just stayed quiet and kept shaking her head. At first, I just figured it was an old house, maybe just making weird noises over time. But the weird stuff just kept happening more and more, and I couldn't keep my cool anymore. Melody was the first to pick up on something feeling off. One morning, Melody suddenly burst into my room, eyes wide, voice shaking. "Mom, I saw somebody, some stranger." I looked where she was pointing, but all I saw was a dark corner of the room, nothing out of the ordinary. I figured maybe Melody was just imagining things. The house was way too big for us, with too many dark corners where the light didn't reach. I would need to put up more lights. One night, while I was getting ready for bed, there was loud, urgent knocking on the door, and my daughter was yelling for me. When I opened the door, Melody was curled up in the corner, staring into the dark. "Mom, there's someone," she said, barely getting it out. "They're right there." I tried to calm her down, but I could tell from Melody's panicked eyes that she wasn't making it up. Every night Melody would cry and scream in fear, saying someone was standing outside the door, her eyes stuck on the darkness behind it. Melody's mental state started to slip and got worse. She was scared of the dark, kept talking about going to school, and didn't want to go home. I took my daughter to the hospital, but she was totally fine when she saw the doctor. She even acted friendly and wasn't scared at all. It seemed like as long as she left home, Melody would go back to being the sweet, lively girl she was before. I started feeling weird too, like there was something that couldn't be touched, but was still there in the space. I started dreaming about my parents. I hardly ever dreamed about them before, but now those dreams come back every night, haunting me. My parents were standing there, their eyes full of worry and pain, like they wanted to say something. Other times, they were 1,000 times scarier. My parents seemed really close, but they weren't the same familiar faces they used to be. Their skin was pale and torn, with deep cuts all over, like they'd been ripped apart, showing layers of rotting flesh. One of my mom's arms was gone, just an ulcer where it used to be, and my dad was missing a leg, with just a stained thigh left. Every time I woke up, I'd get this heavy, breathless feeling in my chest. It felt like they had something to tell me, but I just couldn't get it. Why was I dreaming about them? And why did every dream freak me out so much? This feeling, it didn't make any sense, but it kept haunting me. I didn't dare tell anyone, scared they'd think I was crazy. But most nights, my parents kept showing up in those weird dreams. I was exhausted and told Joe about the creepy dreams I kept having about my parents. I feel like they're trying to tell me something, or maybe warn me about something. When Joe heard me say that, his eyes suddenly went cold, and he stared at me, eyebrows knitted like he was pissed. But the next second, his face totally changed, and I was left confused. Joe thought I was overthinking and told me I just needed to rest. He stopped me from touching the furniture in the house, saying it was too old, useless, and would just bring up bad memories. He'd often throw stuff away without even asking me. He always told me to stay relaxed and focus on taking care of and raising Melody. One time when I saw my mom's oven being packed up and taken away, I couldn't help but cry. I knew Joe was behind it, but what he said made sense for me at the time. I walked over, planning to touch it just one last time. "What are you gonna do?" Joe's serious voice freaked me out and almost made me scream. Joe showed up right behind me, his eyes cold and full of caution. Without saying anything else, he told someone to grab the oven and a few other things, then left while I was left standing there, totally confused. Before this was even over, something else came up, and I just kept sinking deeper into panic. I could barely recognize my daughter. I just put Melody to bed, but when I went down to the kitchen, I saw her sitting on the living room sofa again. I called Melody's name and went over, but she wasn't there. There was no one. I thought I was just dizzy and freaking out. Another time I had just gotten back from taking Melody to school, but then I saw her running from the hallway into the bedroom. I was suspicious and on edge about everything around me. I almost hurt Melody when I mistook her for a shadow and tried to chase her off. The shadow kept showing up in my house more and more. In the dark corners, the living room, at the end of the hallway, sometimes right in front of me when I opened the door, the little girl would just stand there, staring without saying anything, her eyes blank. I couldn't see her face clearly because she was wearing a Minnie Mouse mask. One time, when I went down to the kitchen to get some water in the middle of the night, the little girl was just sitting on a wooden chair in the dining room. When I got closer, she didn't move, but her eyes just stared at me with both pain and anger. "Michelle," I blurted out, when I suddenly felt that familiar vibe from my old friend. Out of her left chest, a dark red stream suddenly started flowing, and I freaked out, stepping back, looking for something to grab onto, then knelt down. The red streak from her chest quickly spread, soaking her shirt and little body. I woke up, screamed, looked around, and felt like I was falling into an endless pit with no light to help me find a way out. The dreams about my parents and all the weird stuff happening in the house had me on edge, like I was stuck in a never-ending nightmare. The broken marriage just drained me more, like I was carrying this huge weight I didn't know how to talk about with anyone. I felt like I was losing myself little by little, so I decided to see a therapist for help. Maybe the messed up marriage made you more sensitive and put a lot of pressure on you. But who knows? Maybe the house you and your daughter are living in now has some other secret. I got home, took the meds the doctor gave me, and my sleep got better. I felt way better. The anxiety and restlessness that had been bugging me for the past few days finally eased up. I took a deep breath, looked around the house, and just soaked in the peaceful vibe. It was time for me to get my act together and take care of my daughter, the house, and everything that's coming next. But what the doctor said still kept me thinking. I knew there was something in this house, like a secret just waiting for me to figure out. One morning I gave Joe a big smile and asked how the house renovation was coming along. Joe smiled, his kind eyes showing that everything was slowly getting done. But when I walked into the living room, I looked around and was shocked to see the whole place had been totally redone. All the old stuff, the things that had been part of the house for so many years, was gone. I felt a mix of shock and disappointment. The family photo of the three of us was gone too, so I asked Joe right away. "Stacy, I just want to help you let go of the past. All this stuff is just holding you back. You're stuck in memories that keep you from moving forward." Joe's words made me tear up. Maybe he was right. I needed to let go of everything tied to the past. I was at a loss for words, wanting to argue, but deep down I knew Joe just wanted what was best for me. A few days later, after I'd calmed down and gotten used to the new place, I told Joe about the little girl in the mask I had met. I told him about the little girl in the mini mask who kept showing up and disappearing. I could kind of make sense of the image of my parents, but that little girl's appearance made no sense to me. I felt off, not getting why these dreams kept happening. I feel like I know her, kinda. Like Michelle. When I talked about the little girl in the mouse mask, I could definitely see the change in Joe's eyes. His eyes suddenly tensed up, like he just snapped out of a deep dream. His eyes weren't calm like usual. Instead, they were filled with worry. His lips were pressed tight, teeth clenched, like he was trying to hold back his emotions. I only had a moment to notice the change in his eyes before Joe suddenly stood up. His gaze went wild, his hands started shaking, and he couldn't control his movements. He started pacing around the room, his fingers brushing the table, the wall, then suddenly opened every cabinet and drawer, rummaging through them while calling out Michelle's name over and over. He grabbed my shoulders tight, eyes wide, yelling at me, "Why can you see Michelle? Why have I tried so many ways but never seen her again?" A moment later, Joe suddenly stopped, standing in the middle of the room, face red, breathing heavy, eyes still full of panic. Finally, he apologized and rushed out, even though I kept asking him questions. A few days later, Joe didn't show up again, which left me even more confused about his weird behavior that day. One morning, while cleaning the old kitchen, I found a small door under the sink, covered by moldy paint and dirt. I don't remember the kitchen ever having a door like that, so I got really curious. I opened the door and found an old wooden box with a rusty lock on it. My heart was racing. After grabbing a small hammer to break the lock, the box popped open, and inside were some papers and a few old photos. My hands were shaking as I went through the papers in the box. Some of the medical papers talked about my childhood illness and how I needed an emergency heart transplant to survive. The more I flipped through, the colder my spine got. The last page was Michelle's organ donation certificate. I collapsed on the floor, my whole body shaking. So Michelle wasn't actually missing. The heart beating in my chest is Michelle's, the friend I once loved. I wanted to confront Joe right then. I called him, but he didn't answer. For the next 2 days, I was a wreck, just living in panic and torment. Then one evening, I heard a knock on the door. I opened the door and saw Joe standing there, looking exhausted and drained. We sat down in the living room. I finally gathered the courage to tell him what I found in the wooden box. Joe didn't seem surprised at all. He just lowered his head and clenched his fists. "Yeah, Stacy, I killed your parents." The confession hit me like a punch to the gut. Your parents were so good to me and Michelle. Just to get ready for the moment they took her away. They didn't just take my daughter's life, they broke my heart. I couldn't handle the pain, so I got my revenge. To this day, I still have no idea where she's hidden. I looked at Joe, my heart hurting. The hate in his eyes scared me and hurt at the same time. But what I couldn't handle even more was the fact that I'm living with Michelle's heart inside me. I was the reason his whole family was falling apart. "But I can't hurt you, Stacy. Michelle is still alive inside you. It's not your fault." After that talk, Joe left the house, and I was left with thoughts I couldn't shake. I sat by Melody's bed, holding her close and crying. I had no idea how I was going to live with this weight on me. I loved my parents, but they did something I just can't forgive. I loved Michelle and was grateful to her because my life was swapped for hers. And I couldn't hate Joe because his pain was something I understood more than anyone. My hand was shaking as I held the phone, my mind torn between calling the police to end it all or staying quiet, hiding this awful secret to protect whatever fragile piece was left for Melody. One afternoon, I was walking around trying to find a way down to the basement because I couldn't find one of our suitcases. The light from my phone's flashlight lit up a corner of the basement. I spotted a small door in the corner of the room. I couldn't resist my curiosity, so I opened the door and walked in. I was surprised to see the room still had all the furniture Joe said he'd thrown away. A wave of nostalgia hit me as I looked at them, and I walked over, touching each one. When I saw the old oven, I suddenly remembered Melody's weird look when she moved in, like she had seen something awful inside. With shaky hands, I decided to open the oven. As soon as I opened the lid, a wave of horror hit me. Inside was a human corpse, just dry bones left, hidden under a rotting shirt. Panic kicked in, so I bolted up the stairs, my heart racing like crazy, tripping all over the place. The first thing that popped into my head was to find Melody right away. Fear hit me in waves as I tore through the rooms, yelling her name, but she was nowhere to be found. The place was dead quiet and empty, making me feel totally trapped. All of a sudden, I heard Melody crying out loud. I dashed to the front yard, where I heard my daughter crying and calling for me. I grabbed Melody and held her tight, finally able to breathe. After a few seconds, I checked her over, and luckily, she was okay. Melody was still crying her eyes out, pointing at the flower bed Joe had planted a few days ago. I felt completely numb all over. Tears started streaming down my face, but I couldn't get a word out. Buried under the soil was a child's skeleton. The little arm had completely rotted away, leaving just dry, white bones. The skull that was showing had a face that was totally falling apart. I hugged Melody tight without thinking, and she cried out in discomfort, which woke me up. I called Joe, and we both found our family. Finally, the truth came out, and the pain had somewhere to settle. The last morning before I left, I found a handwritten letter from Joe on the kitchen table. His handwriting was shaky, emotional, and so intense that I couldn't look away. In the letter, Joe said that for the past 10 years, he stayed in the house for 2 reasons: to find out where Michelle was buried, and to meet me, someone he saw as part of his daughter. He wrote that watching me grow up with Michelle's heart was the only thing that kept him going, giving him a little hope to live. But now, all the pain's been dealt with, Michelle's at peace, and he doesn't have anything left to miss. He hopes I'll live happily and enjoy life for Michelle, because that's what his daughter would have wanted the most. In his last lines, he said that even though he wasn't the best dad, he loved Michelle and knew I was part of his family too. The letter ended with a sincere blessing and a really tough goodbye. As I finished reading the letter, tears filled my eyes, and my heart felt like it was being squeezed by all the sacrifice and love Joe had shown me and Michelle. In that moment, I realized he'd found peace, and I knew I had to live a life that wouldn't let him or Michelle down.
I lost my job and life got pretty tough and flipped upside down. By 29, I should have a steady job instead of sitting around at home, eating fast food to get by, watching all kinds of TV shows and whining about life. All that went on for almost a month, and I looked pretty pathetic. The last bit of luck I had was my girlfriend, Karen. I suggested moving in with Karen. Karen thought it over and finally nodded, agreeing. She pushed me to cheer up and get started on a new job. When I moved in, Karen was chill about it. The place wasn't too big or modern, but it was perfect for the 2 of us and her little dog. The only thing Karen seriously told me was, definitely don't go down to the basement, like ever. I was a bit confused but agreed quickly. After all, it was her place. The basement was the spot I hated most in any house. But can I ask you something about what's down there? Kinda hesitated. A garden, Karen shot back quick and sure of herself. Oh, that's awesome. I said it out loud, but honestly, I was thinking something totally different. A garden in the basement? Maybe Karen was growing plants for some side hustle or something. That made total sense. She definitely needed more than what she was making as a teacher. The furniture in Karen's place wasn't cheap either. She must have really cared about her lifestyle. But making extra cash from growing plants didn't really sound doable, especially in the basement. Come on, Bill. If you were so good at thinking things through and doing the math, you wouldn't be wasting your time like this. I shook off those crazy thoughts and just focused on what was real. The next few days were pretty chill and normal for us. The only thing was, my girlfriend was totally obsessed with watering the plants, and she did it like clockwork at 9 p.m. One time while we were chatting, Karen jumped up like a spring, all panicked, and yelled, "What time is it? I totally forgot about my plants." Karen, plants don't need that much water. I was kinda annoyed by how extra she was. But my plants do. She shot me a look, stressed each word, and then walked off. I waited for Karen in the living room. She always spent about an hour in the garden. I was curious about how big the garden actually was. I quickly apologized when I saw Karen coming up. She was all happy again, and we made up. The next morning, I got the electricity bill from the power company, and Karen wasn't home at the time.
I didn't rush to open the bill. I figured I'd pay it, but I also wanted to chip in a bit for my girlfriend. Just then, Karen came home and asked, "Is that the electricity bill?" "Yeah, Karen, I'll pay the bill," I said while she was opening it to check it out. $600? Karen happily nodded and mumbled to herself. "What?" I gasped in shock. $600? I repeated and grabbed the bill from Karen's hand. "Not too bad, less than last month." Karen was pretty happy and nodded. I was shocked. Less than last month? That garden down there is using up that much electricity? So I just decided to stay quiet. $600 was way too much for an unemployed guy like me. One day, Karen went on a school field trip, and that's when I learned everything. That day, her dog went missing, and I was worried about finding it. Standing in front of the stairs to the basement, I felt a little curious for a second. I remembered what Karen told me, and I was worried she'd find out, but there was no way she could know. I opened the door and walked in, and the lights surprised me. It was super bright and kind of blinding. I slowly opened my eyes to check it out, and it was totally a garden. They were really pretty, all green and smelling awesome like fresh grass. Especially the grapevine in the middle of the basement, with its long, spreading leaves, kind of like a tree spirit representing the soul of the forest. I got closer, and the grapevine suddenly shook and wiggled. Is there some kind of wind system? I wondered. Looking at the grapevine up close, it was huge, about as wide as an adult's back, and it was breathing heavily. As I looked closer, I saw the face of a miserable dude, and his rotting, ulcerated body seemed to blend right into the vine. I freaked out and ran away, packed all my stuff and took off. I even smashed my phone like a total idiot when I saw Karen calling. I'm still in a panic, and I don't want to call the police because I still love and appreciate Karen. What am I gonna do now?
I'm Glenda, 32 years old. I'm a single mother and have a little daughter named Alita, who is 4 years old. My daughter and I live happily in a small house in Boston near the Atlantic coast. I am working as a nursing staff for a local hospital. The income is decent, so I can give Alita a full life. Alita is my anchor in life and the best thing I have. She helped me get through a terrible time 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I married Steven. My ex-husband is 3 years older than me and is a rich businessman. He is famous for his love of flowers. I followed my friend's advice and gave my absolute love and trust to Steven. We live in a large house in the city of Philadelphia, over 300 miles from my current residence. 5 months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. Steven was extremely happy when he heard the news. He burst into tears and hugged me. Steven took very good care of me, giving all the good things to me and the baby in my belly. At the 20th week of pregnancy, my husband and I discussed organizing a party to guess the baby's gender. After consulting with the doctor about my health condition and some related issues, my husband and I excitedly prepared for the party, from the colors and decoration themes of the party, games and activities along with gifts for guests. I asked the doctor to write down the baby's gender on a piece of paper and give it to my best friend to prepare the cake. The party takes place at 8 p.m. at the swimming pool behind the house. The couple's relatives and guests all came. My husband has many important friends and partners. There are people I have never met before, but out of politeness, I still greeted them happily. I'm impressed with a girl named Maria. Maria is so beautiful. She said she is also pregnant at 20 weeks. We shared a lot about our pregnancy story, but I couldn't see Maria's belly clearly, probably because the white dress she was wearing was quite loose. A happy atmosphere covered the party. Steven and I held hands and stood in the center. I can feel the baby in my belly is also happy and kicking gently. The main part of the party is announcing the baby's gender. Everyone was excited and nervous. Small cakes were prepared for each guest. The cake that reveals the baby's gender will have a different color filling than the rest. I was quite surprised when the cake sample was very different from the sample my best friend sent me to see. But it's not too important, so I happily ignore it. Everyone raises their head and counts to 3 to simultaneously break the cake in half. I was quite nervous and shaking, so I was a little slower than everyone else. Everyone's cakes and Stephen's were all blue. When I broke the cake in my hand, a red liquid shot out, causing me to scream in surprise. Everyone cheered and congratulated. Pink confetti shot up behind my husband and I. My baby is a girl. Stephen happily hugged me, but I didn't react because I smelled a very fishy smell. My hands are covered in blood from the cake. From inside the cake, a baby's tiny hand fell out. Everyone was surprised. The atmosphere was quiet. My heart beat very fast. The smell of blood and that horrible image made me dizzy. Suddenly, a loud, crazy laugh caught everyone's attention. From below the guests, the girl Maria just stepped forward, looking at my husband and me with angry eyes. "What do you think, Stephen?" "That's your baby. It's also a girl, and it's 20 weeks." She pointed to the infant's hand on the ground. I turned to look at my husband with puzzled eyes. Stephen looked at me confused and shouted angrily at Maria. "Shut! Whoever allowed you to be here, go away." Maria laughed loudly again, looking like she had lost her mind. She opened the bag in her hand and pulled out a child's body the size of a large banana from inside and held it up high. Everyone at the party panicked. I held my stomach, so shocked that I couldn't stand. I fainted. Before my eyes is a scary black shadow. Suddenly, there was the sound of children crying. The space before my eyes was spinning. The baby's cry echoed and persisted. The newborn baby's face had wide open eyes, red skin, and a big smile with a dark shadow deep inside. I jumped up in surprise and quickly touched my stomach. Surely my girl's still here with me. I was in the hospital. My mother, sitting next to the bed, burst into tears when she saw me wake up. After leaving the hospital, I understood everything clearly. Maria is Stephen's lover. He was with that girl the whole time he loved and married me. Maria and I got pregnant at the same time. When asked to provide and take responsibility for the baby from Maria, Stephen beat Maria, even though she was pregnant with his child. Maria had a miscarriage and suffered from severe emotional turmoil. I filed a lawsuit against Stephen in court. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I moved to Boston to live, and all the time after that I had nightmares about the newborn until Alita was born. The two of us are living a peaceful and happy life.
My name is Jessica. I'm 28 years old, and I've been working at a Taco Bell in West Los Angeles for 3 years now. Usually, the night shift is pretty quiet. We get a few customers after midnight, mostly long-haul truckers or people finishing up a late shift. But this was the worst night shift of my life. It was a night in late February, about 2 years ago. Around 2 a.m., I was wiping down the counters after serving the last group of customers. The store was so silent, I could hear the hum of the refrigerators. My coworker, Tony, was in the back kitchen prepping for the morning rush. The chime above the door rang. I looked up, ready to give my standard customer service smile, but the smile died on my face. A middle-aged man walked in. He immediately caught the attention of me and the few people dining in because of what he was wearing, or rather, what he wasn't. All he had on was bright, neon-colored women's lingerie. He was also carrying a large canvas tote bag. "Hi there, how can I help you?" He didn't answer. His eyes weren't looking at the menu boards above. They were locked onto me. Suddenly, he pulled a large hammer out of his bag and pointed it at me as he leaned over the counter. I jumped back in shock. "Give me all the money," he growled. When he saw me freeze up, he hissed through his teeth, "Hurry up! Open the register and give me everything!" I tried to stay calm. I needed to draw enough attention so Tony would know what was happening in the back. I spoke much louder than usual. "What are you doing? You're going to rob us with a hammer?" "Shut up!" he roared. Then, he pulled a small sharp knife from his bag and aimed it at me. "Give me the cash, or I'll make you regret it." In that split second, my survival instinct kicked in. I wasn't going to just stand there and obey him. I spun around and ran toward the kitchen, toward my co-worker, and more importantly, my personal bag. Inside, I kept a canister of pepper spray that I carry everywhere. "Jessica!" "What's going on?" Tony asked when he saw me bolt into the kitchen with a look of pure panic. "There's a robber. Call the police," I screamed, while frantically digging through my bag for the spray. He chased me into the kitchen, faster than I expected. When I turned around, he was standing right in front of me. But this time, he wasn't holding the hammer or the knife. He was holding a gun. My heart felt like it stopped beating. "You thought you could run." He smirked in a terrifying way and slammed the butt of the gun into my shoulder. A wave of pain shot through my body, and I nearly fell over, but I kept my grip on the pepper spray. As he moved to strike me again, I lunged forward and sprayed it directly into his face. "You bitch!" he shrieked, clutching his face with both hands. His eyes turned blood red, tears streamed down his face, and he started swearing manically. I took the chance to run back to the counter, grabbed a tray of loose change, and threw it toward the back exit to distract him. Even though his eyes were burning, he wouldn't give up. He gripped the gun tight and racked the slide. "I'll shoot! I'll kill everyone!" he yelled, pointing the gun at me and then at Tony, who was standing by the phone, trying to dial 911. We stood there like statues, not daring to breathe. The air was thick with tension. One wrong move, and it would all be over. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and images of my family and friends flashed through my mind. I really thought I was going to die. Luckily, a customer outside had already called the cops. The distant sound of sirens made him panic. He scrambled to grab a few coins off the floor and bolted into the dark alley beside the store. The police arrived immediately and coordinated with a patrol helicopter to search the area. I could hear the roar of the helicopter engines above and saw the spotlight sweeping through the neighborhood. Tony put his arm around my shoulder, telling me it was over. About 20 minutes later, we heard over the police radio that they found him. According to the report, he had tried to outsmart the cops by changing his clothes as a disguise, but the helicopter's infrared camera spotted him hiding behind a large dumpster in an alley not far away. When the police closed in, he jumped out and pointed his gun at them. The officers drew their weapons and shouted for him to drop it. Then, something strange happened. He suddenly threw the gun to the ground and turned to run toward a high fence nearby. He tried to climb over to escape, but he wasn't fast enough. The police used a taser to bring him down. When the police inspected the evidence, they discovered the gun was actually just a toy air pistol. However, the hammer and the knife were very real. He was prosecuted, and under California law, he faced more than 5 years in prison. A few days later, I got a call from the police department. They praised me for my bravery and for being smart enough to handle a dangerous situation. They said I helped buy enough time for the officers to get there. My manager gave me a bonus and a few days of paid leave to recover. That was the most terrifying experience of my life, but it's when I realized how powerful it is to stay calm in the middle of a panic. Equipping yourself with self-defense skills is so important and essential, especially when you're a woman. Around 3 a.m. on January 28, 2025, at a fast food restaurant in West Los Angeles, a 41-year-old man named Hao used a hammer, a knife, and a toy gun to threaten a female employee for money. After being fended off with pepper spray, he fled when he heard police sirens. Police used a helicopter to track him down and successfully apprehended him. Hao was charged with 4 serious felonies and faces over 5 years in prison.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
My name is Melvin. When I was 22, I worked as a security guard at a lonely steel mill in Pennsylvania. My job was usually very quiet with long, boring shifts. That changed when a senior coworker retired and a guy named Logan was hired to replace him. From the moment I met him, Logan gave me an uneasy feeling. He was like the silence right before a massive storm. He was a huge man with deep-set eyes and a thick beard that covered half his face. Strange scars ran down his neck and across his knuckles. They looked like proof of a violent past. Logan rarely spoke. When he did talk, he said every word very slowly and with heavy emphasis. He was also extremely sensitive to noise. Loud sounds would make him go into a state of high alert. My other co-workers whispered that he looked like a serial killer. Some said he was a time bomb that could explode and destroy everything at any moment. After a few weeks, I was assigned to work the night shift with Logan for 7 days. While our supervisor stayed in the office, Logan and I had to patrol the dark warehouses together. The air always smelled like rust. Those nights were haunting. I often heard Logan muttering to himself in a very angry voice. I think he did this only when he thought he was alone. I tried to start conversations to break the tension. From our short talks, I learned that Logan was badly injured at an old job, and the company had abandoned him. His only hobbies were intense exercise, restoring a 2006 Pontiac GTO, and reading old Russian philosophy books. I began to realize this man was carrying a lot of baggage from a dark past. But I felt like he was a threat to people from his history, not to coworkers like me. Everything reached a breaking point on the 4th night of our shift. Around 1 a.m., we were sitting in the guard shack by the main entrance. The silence was suddenly shattered when Logan stood up fast. He stared hard at the dark road ahead. "Something is coming up," he said. His voice was deep and threatening. I looked out, but I only saw pitch-black darkness. Logan was certain. "They turned off their lights so we won't see them. They are closing in." A second later, bright headlights from a van suddenly blinded us right in front of the shack. Before I could react, Logan lunged at me. He hit me like a pro football player and tackled me to the floor. At that exact moment, the entire guard shack exploded under a hail of machine gun fire. Logan laid on top of me. He used his giant body as a shield to protect me from flying glass and bullets that were shredding the thin walls. When the shooting paused, Logan, the only one on our team licensed to carry a gun, ran outside to fire back. I was trapped in a dark corner, shaking and holding a useless flashlight and pepper spray. From outside, A raspy, murderous voice shouted, "Where's Reed?" I didn't answer. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I'm asking again, "Where is Reed?" "I don't know anyone named Reed. It's just me and Logan in here," I yelled back. "Logan? Fine. I'm counting to 3. Hand him over, or I'm coming in to kill you both." 1. I backed into the corner, gripping my pepper spray even though I knew it wouldn't help. 2. I heard other footsteps surrounding the shack. We were trapped. 3. Gunshots rang out again, but this time they were directed outside. There were screams, the sound of people running, and more chaotic gunfire coming from everywhere. A moment later, Logan appeared at the door. His gun was still hot, and his eyes looked wild. He barked an order for me to run to the main security office immediately. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely call the police. When the cops arrived, Logan was gone. After a deep background check, they found out all his ID papers were fake. His real name was Reed. He was a former prison gang member hiding out after a bloody war with his old crew. It has been almost 7 years, and I still work at that steel mill. I still don't know what he did to make those men hunt him down at a remote factory in Pennsylvania. But even though I know the truth about that time bomb, I will always be grateful. No matter who he was or how dark his past was, he saved my life that night. This is a supernatural mystery that I personally experienced. I used to work as a nursing assistant at a nursing home here in the Midwest. It was an old, 4-story red brick building. The hallways were very long and always smelled like a mix of bleach and pureed food. The rooms, they were designed for 2 people and were numbered starting from the elevator. There was an unwritten rule in the facility about room assignments. Residents who were in better health, mentally sharp, and needed less help were placed in the number 1 rooms at the end of each floor. These people were independent and almost never bothered the night shift staff unless there was a real emergency. For a night shift nurse, the number 1 rooms were like a guarantee of peace during a busy shift. That stayed true until one night in November. I was working at the nurses' station on the 2nd floor. At exactly 2 a.m., something very strange happened. Suddenly, every single call light for the number 1 rooms on all 4 floors turned on at the same time. The control panel lit up, and long, loud beeps filled the quiet hallway. It sounded like a terrifying alarm. I had worked there for 4 years, and I had never seen anything like it. The residents in the number 1 rooms rarely used their call lights. The chance of 4 people on 4 different floors pressing their buttons at the exact same second was almost 0. I grabbed my walkie-talkie and checked in with my coworkers on the other floors. We all ran toward the rooms at the end of the hallways. I pushed open the door to room 201. The room was dim, lit only by a faint yellow nightlight. Arthur, a retired engineer who was usually very calm, was sitting up in his bed. His thin hands were gripping the edge of his blanket, and he was shaking uncontrollably. I walked over to him and kept my voice low. "Arthur, it's me. What's going on? Are you feeling okay?" He didn't look at me. His cloudy eyes were locked onto the window. The curtain had been pulled to the side in a hurry. He pointed a trembling finger at the glass. His voice sounded like dry leaves rubbing together. "It is going down," he whispered. I started to walk toward the window, but Arthur grabbed my sleeve. He was so scared that his grip was actually painful. "Don't look directly out there. He just passed by. A man in dark clothes, head first. His hands were flat against the glass, like this brick wall was flat ground." The most terrifying part happened next. When I talked to my coworkers on the radio, they told me the exact same story. Their residents in the other number 1 rooms all said they saw a man crawling downward right outside their windows. The details were identical. It was as if they all saw the same thing at the same time, even though they were on different floors and had no way to talk to each other. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The logic of the situation was impossible. These residents lived on different floors and rarely interacted. None of them had cell phones to coordinate a prank. Besides, these were the most mentally stable people in the entire building. My unease turned into real fear when we asked the security guards to search the grounds. They used high-powered flashlights to check the bushes, the walls, and even the roof. They found absolutely nothing. There were no signs of climbing gear, no ropes, and no footprints. The exterior walls were smooth brick. There were no balconies or ledges for a person to hold on to. A police officer arrived later, but he just shook his head. There were no signs of a break-in or any disturbance from the outside. After that night, it never happened again. Everything went back to the slow, boring routine of the nursing home. However, the silence of the residents in those rooms was what haunted me the most. They never mentioned the man again, but their eyes always avoided the windows as soon as the sun went down. Many years have passed since then. I eventually quit that job and moved away, but sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night. I dream about the sound of all those call lights going off at once. Whether it was a ghost or something else, I know for sure that something not from this world visited us that night. Some mysteries will never have an answer, and some fears stay with you forever. I just hope that the man crawling on the wall that year finally reached the ground and disappeared, rather than hiding in some dark corner on the upper floors of that building. I still wonder what really happened that night. Why did they all see the same thing and then stay silent like it never happened? Even though I left that place years ago, I still feel like something is watching me from behind the window whenever it gets dark. I'm Alan, and I've been hauling freight across the Midwest for 10 years. I usually work the night shift because the pay is better and the roads are emptier. Driving in the dark through desolate areas, I've witnessed all kinds of strange things, from deer frozen in my headlights and hitchhikers to UFO sightings. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night, that winter in rural Ohio. That night, around 2 a.m., I was delivering a shipment of coffee and pastries to a Dunkin' Donuts located off a highway exit. Cold wind whistled through the truck's crevices, accompanied by dusting of snow. As I maneuvered my large truck around to the back of the building to park, the lot was empty. There was only the dim light from the drive-through service window. As my truck's headlights swept across the roadside curb ahead, I spotted her. A woman huddled in the snow, knees pressed to her chest, rocking slightly, her breath forming white clouds. She was wearing shorts and a tank top, clothing completely inadequate for the biting cold of a Midwest winter. Truck drivers learned to react quickly, and I knew full well that in the middle of the night in a secluded place, a solitary woman could mean trouble. I turned off the engine and slipped the cheap stun gun I bought online into my pocket. When I jumped out of the cab, she didn't look up until I was about 10 feet away. That's when I saw the dark stains on her shorts. Before I could say a word, she sprang to her feet. Her eyes were wild, like a cornered animal. Her voice was shrill, echoing in the dead of night. "My boyfriend stabbed me in the butt." After saying that, she began pacing back and forth, clapping her hands against her hips, and repeatedly shouting the sentence, "He stabbed me right in the butt. Can you believe it, my own boyfriend?" I paused for a moment and then responded, "Whoa, easy there, miss," I said, holding up my hands as if calming a frightened horse. "Are you okay? You don't look good. Do you need any help?" She continued to pace, mumbling something I couldn't make out. Then, she spoke louder. stabbed me in the butt. Yes, that's what he did right there. She turned around, pointing behind her, her voice growing harsher as she accused her boyfriend. She said he was crazy, and she had only cheated once a week and kept calling her boyfriend a jealous bastard for stabbing her. I immediately pulled out my phone and called 911. I reported to the operator that I was at the Dunkin' Donuts off Route 42 near Millersburg, and there was a woman who said her boyfriend stabbed her and needed immediate medical attention. Hearing me call the police, the woman stopped, tilting her head as if to listen. Her expression shifted to one of seriousness, and her voice dropped. "Are you calling the police? Mostly EMTs. Sit down, okay? You're hurt, and help is on the way." I explained while trying to shield the phone slightly, but her attitude became hostile. She introduced herself as Emily and explained that her boyfriend had stopped the car at the gas station after an argument. He took a knife from the glove compartment and bam, right in the cheek of the butt. I urged her to sit down because she was bleeding, but she refused. The operator asked me if she was under the influence of any substances. I asked, "Emily, have you taken any drugs or anything tonight?" Her eyes narrowed and her attitude changed completely. She stopped pacing and looked straight into my eyes. "This isn't my blood, and it might just be yours." She said I had made a big mistake by calling the police and threatened, "I'll stab you in the butt or worse." Without waiting, I quickly backed up, yanked open the cab door, jumped in, slammed the door shut, and locked it just as she pounded on the window. "Open up. You think you're safe in there?" I quickly reported to the operator that she was threatening me and that the blood was not hers. After one more pound on the door, Emily turned her back and ran straight across the parking lot into the adjacent field of tall grass. I started the engine, shining my headlights to follow her. She glanced back at me once, her face twisted in rage, and disappeared into the thick woods a few hundred yards away. The darkness quickly swallowed her. I sat in my truck, the stun gun gripped tightly in my hand, until I saw flashing blue lights in my mirror. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. I confirmed I was the caller and told them the girl had run into the woods in that direction. An officer shone his flashlight onto the curb, where there were streaks of fresh blood. They made me wait in the truck while they searched. EMTs also arrived but had no one to treat. It wasn't until dawn that the sheriff's deputy returned with a serious expression. He said there was no sign of the girl. The woods were too dense, and she could be miles from the main road. "You believe me, right?" I asked, my voice hoarse from fatigue and tension. I pointed to the bloodstain clearly visible on the ground, emphasizing, "The blood is right there. You can check it yourself." He sighed, saying they had collected a blood sample and would check missing persons reports and domestic violence cases. I spent the next hour recounting everything. Finally, I asked, "Do you think she killed someone?" The officer shrugged. "It's possible. The blood will tell us more." The police let me leave after finishing the report. When I delivered the goods to the Dunkin' Donuts manager, he looked at me in astonishment, saying he had heard screaming and police sirens all night but didn't dare step outside. I just nodded, saying nothing more. Afterward, I climbed back into the cab, started the engine, and silently hit the road. But the image of Emily wouldn't leave me. Her huddled figure by the roadside, her wild eyes, her voice both pleading and threatening. It all kept replaying in my head. My name is Jimmy. I've been a night shift receptionist at the Riverside Motel for 3 years. It's a small motel on the highway, located in the middle of a small town called Millbrook, Ohio. In Millbrook, everyone knows each other. Rumors spread faster than the wind. Our town is so small and peaceful that a stranger might think time moves slower here. Wooden houses line the quiet streets. The Miller's family grocery store has been here since 1952. On Sunday mornings, after church, everyone gathers at Miller's Diner. They drink coffee and chat. The Riverside Motel, with its cozy rooms overlooking the river, mainly serves travelers. But sometimes it also becomes a place for private dates. Dr. Richard Morrison was one of the most respected people in our town. For many years, he ran a family clinic and took care of everyone's health. Richard was on the church board and donated to the local school. His wife, Susan, taught piano to children and ran a book club. They had 2 daughters and were the perfect model of a family. So I was quite surprised when I started seeing Richard show up at the motel one night. The first time was a few months ago. He was holding hands with a young woman. I was impressed by her standout blonde hair and her bright red dress. When I gave him the room key, Richard looked me straight in the eye. I understood what he was trying to tell me. I just nodded politely and pretended to be busy with paperwork. From then on, they became regulars. Every time he left, Richard would leave a $100 bill on the counter. I took the money with mixed feelings. A little bit of disappointment to see someone I once respected do something like that. But it wasn't my business. And honestly, I couldn't say no to that money. Everything changed when a new colleague named Marcus started working. Marcus was young, full of energy, and not from our town. "She's hot," Marcus whispered to me when he first saw Richard and the girl walk in. "My God, the old man with her must be really rich." I warned Marcus to watch his mouth and mind his own business. He just shrugged and gave a wry smile. Then one night, things started to get weird. Richard and the girl came, but they stayed longer than usual. Around 3 a.m., only Richard came out. He placed the key on the counter. "She'll be out later. I have to go." I didn't pay much attention and went back to my work. A moment later, Marcus suddenly pulled me into a hidden corner. He looked excited. "I have something to confess to you." I hid a small camera in the bathroom of that room. I was shocked. "Marcus, are you crazy?" "I know, but that girl is too hot. I swear this is just a one-time thing," Marcus said as he quickly worked on his phone. The screen showed a black and white image from the hidden camera. It started with the girl walking into the bathroom. I won't describe the next images. Both Marcus and I watched with great focus. A loud thud sounded. It was followed by a painful scream, then silence. The girl had slipped. We saw it clearly. A dark liquid started to flow from her head. It spread quickly. Dr. Richard ran in. He found the girl lying motionless on the bathroom floor. But instead of calling an ambulance, he stood still for a few minutes. He just stared, as if he was thinking about something. What happened next will haunt us for the rest of our lives. Richard took out medical tools. He sat down next to the girl. He gently cut her into small pieces. And then, he ate some of those pieces. There is no way to describe our feelings. With calmness, he slowly ate little by little. After a while, he continued to eat the internal organs. Marcus was frozen. I don't remember how many times I threw up. Finally, I crawled to the phone on the counter to call the police. 2 police officers arrived a few minutes later. After watching the video, they immediately blocked off the room. They also called for backup and a crime scene investigation team. They searched the room with luminol. They found traces of blood under the bathroom floor even though it had been thoroughly cleaned. What was even more surprising was that the remaining body parts were neatly arranged in the refrigerator. The head, with its wide-open eyes, and the golden hair that once impressed me, were now smeared with dried blood. Dr. Morrison was arrested the next morning at his clinic. At the police station, according to the detective doctor, Morrison confessed everything. They had met on an online dating site. On that fateful night, the girl slipped in the bathroom and suffered a head injury, but she didn't die right away. If she had gotten help in time, she could have lived. Dr. Morrison said he panicked. He didn't dare to call 911 because he was afraid his affair would be exposed. That would cause his career, family, and reputation to fall apart. In his desperation, he chose to hide the evidence by getting rid of the body himself in a way no one could have ever imagined. the detective explained to us. After the incident, the Riverside Motel was temporarily closed. Marcus and I were forced to testify in court. Dr. Richard, who was once respected by the whole town, had to go to trial. He was charged with hiding a death and desecrating a corpse. I've never stopped thinking about that blonde woman. Now that I look back, I'm not sure what makes me more uncomfortable, the images of what Richard did, or the fact that I was an accessory to a sick person. My name is Mia, and I'm 22 years old. I work as a cashier at a Shell gas station in Texas. The station is located in the middle of a huge field. There are a few cars during the day, but after midnight, it's like a ghost town. I usually work the day shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Jack works the afternoon shift, and Tom is in charge of the night shift. But that day, Tom called in sick and couldn't come to work. He asked me to cover for him. I agreed without knowing that it would be the most terrifying night of my life. Jack handed over the afternoon shift to me at 10 p.m. He reminded me to lock the storeroom door carefully because a few kids had been causing trouble in the back last week. I was a little nervous because it was my first time working the night shift. The first 2 hours passed normally, with a few trucks stopping for gas and soda. I sat behind the counter reading a magazine, listening to the soft country music from the radio, which made me feel less lonely. Around 2 a.m., when everything was completely quiet, I heard a scratching sound from the back. The sound was like claws scratching wood. I looked up and listened, guessing it was the raccoons looking for food again. Raccoons are very common in Texas and often rummage through trash cans for leftovers. Our gas station is located near the woods, so this happens often. Usually, I just make a loud noise, and they get scared and leave. I yelled to scare them away as usual, but the scratching only stopped for a few seconds and then started again. I was a little nervous because this had never happened before. I yelled louder, but the scratching not only didn't stop, it became more frantic. Then I heard a completely different sound, a loud banging, as if someone was punching the drywall repeatedly. No raccoon could make that sound. A scary thought crossed my mind. Someone was in the storeroom. I slowly stood up, my eyes fixed on the door leading to the storeroom in the back. My mind told me I should immediately lock the front door and call the police, but a part of me thought I might be overreacting. Maybe it was just a homeless person looking for shelter. Curiosity mixed with a little pride made me want to check the situation myself. I slowly walked to the storeroom door and pushed it open slightly, making a soft creaking sound. The scratching stopped completely. The air suddenly became tense. Although I hadn't seen anything inside yet, I already felt a sense of regret. Suddenly, the door burst open. In the dim light, I saw the figure of a man stumbling out. His appearance made me want to scream, but no sound could come out. His hair was messy and dirty, and his clothes were tattered, covered in black stains. But the scariest thing was his face. His skin had deep scratches. His eyes were wide, and his gaze was wild like a hungry animal. His mouth was wide open, revealing his yellowed teeth. He ran straight at me with insane speed. My survival instinct suddenly kicked in. I turned around and ran straight for the front door, running with all my might. Behind me, he was chasing me. I didn't dare to look back. Suddenly, a police car was parked right in front of the gas station door. 3 police officers were getting out of the car. I ran straight toward them. "Help me! There's a stranger in the storeroom!" I yelled. 2 officers quickly drew their guns and went inside the store. One officer stayed behind to reassure me. "Calm down, we'll take care of it." A driver passing by here called the police. He saw a person acting strangely behind the gas station. From the description, it seemed like he was trying to dig through the wall. Right then, the shouts of the 2 officers rang out. The man was now completely aware of the police's presence, but instead of surrendering, he decided to run. He ran toward the back door of the gas station, trying to escape into the woods behind. The 2 officers immediately chased after him. It didn't take long for them to catch up and restrain him. The intruder's final screams rang out and then sank into silence. "Suspect is in custody. one of the officers reported over his radio. After that terrifying incident, I took a few days off to get my head straight. The owner also called a repairman to patch the hole in the wall behind the storeroom. He also decided to install more security cameras and motion sensor lights around the area. Since that night, there have been no more break-ins at the gas station. I have not agreed to work any night shifts for any reason ever again. It was so lucky that someone noticed in time and called the police. I'm grateful, but also a little sad that I don't know who they are to thank them. There are moments in life when you realize that true evil doesn't have to be supernatural to be terrifying. I learned that on a late August night last year, while working the night shift at a Shell gas station in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm Carlos, 32 years old. I'm divorced and work the night shift to earn extra money to support my son. This job is usually quiet. Only a few long-haul truckers stop by and some drunk teenagers buy beer late at night. After my divorce, my life was already very subdued, and since I started working the night shift at this gas station, that quietness became even more profound. I even found myself reacting more slowly to every situation. That night, I was sitting behind the counter, looking at my phone. Outside, a light drizzle was falling, creating thin streaks of water on the window. The atmosphere was so quiet that I could hear the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above my head. Then the glass door burst open. A man walked in. He was big and had a disheveled and aggressive appearance. He walked straight to the counter and slammed a $50 bill down. The noise made me jump. He shouted just one word: "Gas!" I was startled and immediately stood up straight. He clenched his hands and stared at me for about 2 seconds. Without saying another word, he turned around and strode out. I put the money away, and a thought popped into my head: just another punk. Through the glass, I saw him go straight to pump number 4. His car was parked crookedly, not in the right spot. I stood up and walked to the window to watch. At first, I thought I would watch him struggle to open the gas cap or get the nozzle in, but what happened next made me freeze. He pulled the pump nozzle out, but instead of putting it in the gas tank, he opened the passenger side door. The lights from the gas station clearly illuminated his actions as he lifted the nozzle and began spraying gas directly into the car. I stood there, horrified. My mind was trying to process what my eyes were seeing. I rushed to the control panel and slammed the emergency shutoff button. A loud alarm blared, and gas pump number 4 immediately shut down. I took out my phone, and my hands were shaking as I dialed 911. I had just managed to give the dispatcher the address. The call was interrupted when I witnessed the next horrifying scene. A girl scrambled out of the passenger side door. Her body was drenched in gasoline, and she was in a state of extreme panic. She was screaming as she ran toward the highway, each step leaving gasoline trails on the ground. "I need police now. He's doused a girl in gasoline," I yelled into the phone. The next second, the man roared like a wild animal. I quickly threw my phone down and ran to the main door to watch. He threw the pump nozzle down and ran after the girl. Although he was big, he ran terrifyingly fast. In just a few seconds, he caught up to her. The scene in front of me will haunt me for the rest of my life. The man repeatedly kicked the girl brutally. The girl curled up on the ground, trying to shield herself with her small hands. Every kick made me shiver. I couldn't just stand there anymore. I was sure I was no match for that giant of a man. But I had to at least stall him until the police arrived. Otherwise, he would crush that girl. "Stop!" I ran out and yelled, but my voice was weak against his rage. He turned to look at me, his eyes red with hatred. "This bitch is cheating, she's playing me, and I'm gonna let her play with fire," he roared. My heart was pounding in my chest. The smell of gasoline was strong, and just a tiny spark would make this girl ignite instantly like a fireball. I talked to him, trying to reason with him. I tried to make my voice sound calm. "Hey man, calm down, we can talk about this." But he didn't even look at me. Just as he put his hand in his pocket, probably to find a lighter, police sirens blared. A few seconds later, 2 police officers jumped out of their patrol car, tasers ready in their hands. They yelled at the man to stop what he was doing. The man hesitated for a second. Then, like a cornered beast, He charged at the police. The sound of electricity buzzed. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground, convulsing for a few seconds before becoming still. I let out a gasp of relief, my entire body relaxing. Everything was okay now. An ambulance arrived a few minutes later. They quickly provided medical care to the girl. The police took my statement. They praised my courage before they left. But I didn't feel like a hero. The following nights, I worked in a state of extreme tension. Every time a customer walked in, I would watch every movement, every look. I talked to the store owner about installing more security cameras and keeping a baseball bat under the counter. After the incident, I realized that a person's rage can be truly terrifying if it's not stopped in time. Real monsters don't need fangs and claws. Sometimes it's just a normal person controlled by anger. I never thought a regular night shift would turn into a life or death escape. I'm Cassie, and I was 22 at the time, working part-time at a Dollar Tree store on East Main Street. I usually worked the evening shift because the pay was better, and I worked with Amanda. She was 2 years older than me with platinum blonde hair. Amanda was pretty private. She rarely talked about her family, only occasionally mentioning that she had to be independent from an early age. That particular shift, I remember it was around mid-August. I was doing inventory in the home goods section, while Amanda was tidying up the cash register. When the door chime rang, a man walked in. My immediate impression was how incredibly tall he was. He walked straight to the back of the store, turning left into the toy aisle. I assumed he was looking to buy something, so I didn't pay much more attention. A little later, I finished my task and headed towards the front counter. "Where did that customer go?" I asked. Amanda looked up, confused. "Which customer?" When I described the man in the black leather jacket, Amanda looked up from the register, bewildered. "I'm sorry. I didn't notice anyone come in." Just then, a rustling sound came from the aisles. We looked in that direction, then at each other, understanding that the customer was still inside. Browse. We finished our end-of-day tasks while waiting for him. Amanda started counting the cash in the register following the closing procedure, and I went to rearrange items that customers had moved. At 9 p.m., the store was supposed to close. We hadn't heard any more sounds from the aisles. Not sure if the customer was still inside, we decided to check. But strangely, he was nowhere to be found. "Maybe he left when we were busy," Amanda said. This was a bit odd, but not impossible. Perhaps he had slipped out quietly while we were focused on our work. We decided to complete the closing procedure. I continued turning off lights in the remaining sections while Amanda finished counting the money. The store was now only lit by emergency lights and the lights at the checkout counter. As I was in the back of the store, a strange noise came from the direction of the storage room. I stood about 10 yards from the storage room. "Amanda!" I called out, but there was no answer. I waited a few more seconds, but still silence. Thinking it was a mouse or something falling, I walked towards the main area of the store. When I reached the counter, Amanda wasn't there. The chair she had just been sitting in was still warm, and her purse and car keys were still in the drawer. I was a little confused, so I called out loudly, "Amanda, where are you?" My voice echoed in the quiet space. I walked around the store, slowly heading towards the back storage room. As I walked, I called out Amanda's name a few more times, but still no answer. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, and a message from Amanda appeared on the screen. "Get out of the store now." I froze, incredibly confused. The phone vibrated again. A second message from Amanda. "He went into the back room and tried to attack me. I ran, but he's still in there." My body went numb. All the pieces started clicking into place in my head. That tall man hadn't left the store at all. He had been hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment when the store was empty and dark. I slowly backed towards the main door, each step feeling like it was weighted with lead, my eyes still fixed on the dark hallway leading to the back. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. Just as I turned to bolt, a loud noise erupted from the back. I spun around, and a tall, dark figure lunged forward. In the flickering fluorescent light, what he held in his hand became clear. A large knife. There was something dark on the blade. I turned and sprinted towards the main door with all my strength. He lunged after me at terrifying speed. My reflection showed him swinging the knife like a weapon of death. In the very next second, the blade grazed my left arm, tearing my shirt and leaving a deep, long cut. A searing pain erupted and warm blood flowed down, but the pain only made me run faster. I shoved the door open and burst outside. Immediately, I turned back and locked the door. From inside, violent pounding on the door echoed, accompanied by threatening snarls like a caged beast. I pulled out my phone with a blood-soaked hand, dialing 911. Unexpectedly, before I could even make the call, the police arrived along with an ambulance, sirens blaring. My wound was quickly bandaged. I pointed at the store and recounted everything to the officers, my voice broken with shock. They surrounded the store, and it wasn't long before they let him out, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. Once he was in the police car, I urgently asked the officers about Amanda, my co-worker. She texted me a warning and then disappeared. Is she hurt? A middle-aged officer looked at me. We found her about 20 minutes ago. She had collapsed by the roadside, probably right after she made the call to us. She'd lost blood and has been taken to the hospital. A wave of relief washed over me. Amanda was safe, and thanks to her quick thinking, the police had arrived in time. The next day, once Amanda was conscious and stable, I visited her at the hospital. I asked Amanda about what happened in the storage room. She was silent for a long time, then sighed. It was my brother, Michael. Shock was clear on my face when I heard this. Her brother? The one she had never mentioned? Michael abused me since I was little, both physically and mentally. A few years ago, I reported everything to the police. Michael went to jail. Amanda turned her face to look out the hospital window, her voice slightly choked. He just got out of prison last week. No one in the family wants to help him financially or with a place to stay. He blames me, saying I ruined his life. Amanda closed her eyes, as if trying to push away horrifying images. I tried to keep my past a secret, start a new life, but he still found me. I hugged Amanda tightly, trying not to cry with her. 2 weeks later, Amanda returned to work. We still worked late shifts together, but now with at least one more coworker, and management had installed more security cameras and an alarm system. Michael was convicted of aggravated assault and using a dangerous weapon. Now, I've graduated and have a job in my field. Amanda and I are still good friends. I never thought that working at Popeyes would land me in a situation like that. My name is Sam. I'm 19, and I had just moved from Dallas down to Austin for college. This happened when I had only been working at Popeyes for a week. It was my first job, and I chose the evening shift because the pay was a little better. The store was located on East Cesar Chavez, a busy area. That night around 8 p.m., the store was pretty empty, just a couple of customers. Jake, the shift manager, was checking the fryer machine in the back. I was standing alone at the counter. A moment later, the door opened and a customer walked in. From the way she walked, I immediately knew something was off. Her steps were unsteady, and her hair was matted with sweat even though it wasn't hot outside. The smell of alcohol was strong as she approached the counter. I want the number 3 combo. She didn't look at the menu, but looked straight at me as soon as she stopped at the counter. I punched in the order on the register, my hands shaking slightly. The number 3 combo includes 3 pieces of chicken, fries, and a buttermilk biscuit. The total is $12.49. She handed me a $20 bill. Where's the soda? Ma'am, this combo does not include a drink. Would you like to add a soda? It's $2.99. Her face instantly changed. Her eyes went wide and her mouth twisted. No drink? I bought a combo. Ma'am, our number 3 combo does not include a soda. It's just chicken, fries, and a biscuit. I repeated slowly again, my voice trembling. I glanced toward the back, hoping Jake would show up, but he was still busy with the machinery. "Get the manager out here," she bellowed. I felt my heart rate speed up. This was the first time I had to deal with a situation like this. "Ma'am, I can help you. I apologize for the misunderstanding. I can give you a free cold drink." I tried to keep my voice calm. She stared at me for a few seconds and then suddenly laughed. A grating, mocking laugh. "Is that right?" She took a step back and started to dance. She moved her hips vulgarly, waved her arms up and down, and grinned directly at me. "Where's my soda? Where's my soda?" she sang while dancing. I froze. I knew she was drunk. The smell of alcohol was overpowering, but I still couldn't have anticipated this bizarre behavior. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. A family in the corner got up. They quickly ushered their children out the door. "Please stop. If you don't want to buy anything, please leave the store," I said, my voice shaking a little. She stopped dancing and looked straight into my eyes for a few seconds. "No soda?" Her voice suddenly became very soft. Then she looked around the store. "No, ma'am," I replied, my heartbeat quickening a little more. She walked over to an advertising sign near the door, bent down, and picked it up. The sign was nearly 3 feet long and about an inch thick. "Hey, you can't touch that." I stepped out from behind the counter and exclaimed. She held the sign with both hands and turned to look at me with an expressionless face. "I want my soda." Then she slammed the sign hard into the large window next to the entrance door. "Stop it!" I yelled. The sound of breaking glass rang out like a gunshot. Shards of glass flew everywhere. That wasn't all. She picked up a plastic chair and threw it at the second window. The sound of breaking glass shook the entire store again. I stood there, unable to move. I watched her pick up another chair. This time, she wasn't looking at the windows anymore. She turned and looked at me with a hostile expression. "I still don't have my soda, do I?" she said, and started walking toward me. I backed up, my legs numb, unable to run. She got closer, starting to raise the plastic chair high. "I'm sorry, I'll give you a free soda," I shrieked. She was about to throw it at me. I put my hands up to cover my face, bracing myself. What is going on here? Jake's voice rang out from the back. He had just run out from the kitchen and saw the chaotic scene. She stopped, turning to look at Jake. In that moment, I retreated behind the counter. "Call the police!" Immediately, Jake yelled at me. She looked at Jake, then back at me. She threw the chair onto the floor and started to laugh. I tremblingly dialed 911, my eyes still fixed on her. The police arrived after about 10 minutes. By then, she had stopped. They found her sitting on the floor amid the broken glass, holding a large piece of glass in her hand. She did not resist when they handcuffed her. As the police led her away, she turned back, smiled at me, and said, "I still didn't get my soda." I felt so scared and helpless that I burst into tears. Later, I learned that her name was Emily. She was a frequent alcoholic and didn't have a stable job. Emily was sentenced to 6 months in jail and had to pay $3,000 for the damages. The store had to close for a few days for repairs. I didn't go back to working the night shift. I found another job at a library downtown.
I'm Alice, 26 years old, working as a switchboard operator for a hospital in Miami, Florida. My work is divided into 2 shifts, day shift and night shift. I often sign up to work the night shift because the night shift will have a higher pay. The work is not too difficult, but requires me to apply a lot of knowledge and skills at the same time. I will receive and handle calls to the hospital, provide information about services, support patients and customers, answer questions, and direct them to relevant departments. One evening I was on duty. It was about 11 p.m. I received a call. Hello, how may I help you?
I called to ask for guidance on how to help a girl be happy again.
It was the voice of a man. I guess he was in his 40s. I was quite surprised by this case, but realized this was not an emergency. Maybe this man is quite meticulous in taking care of his loved ones. I asked him gently. I am very willing, sir. May I ask what your name is?
Logan.
Yes, Mr. Logan. I wonder if the person you are interested in is your wife or your daughter.
She is not my wife or my daughter. We just met 2 hours ago. I already forgot her name.
His answer surprised me again, and I was silent for about 3 seconds. I asked him how she was doing. The man was silent for a moment, then spoke in a laughing voice.
She seemed very scared. She was crying. She seemed to be shaking.
Can I talk to her, sir? The man immediately refused when he heard my suggestion. He said he wanted to take care of that girl himself. I patiently continued the conversation with a bad feeling about this man. I hastily asked for the man's current address. He laughed.
Let me think for a moment. There are so many people here, so many. They are all lying quietly at my feet.
I remained silent at Logan's confusing answer. He suddenly laughed, said he was just joking, and read the address to me. Working very quickly on the computer, I realized it was an area near the cemetery, about 20 kilometers from the hospital. Suddenly, a girl's moans rang out from the other end of the line. I listened attentively. The moans seemed to come out while being gagged. Is something wrong, sir?
Oh, no. My girl is a bit resistant. I don't like this at all.
I heard a punch or something. I'm sure it was the sound of force being applied to the human body. I was very confused with all the inferences. That man spoke up.
She's better now, but she's looking at me with angry eyes.
I try to reassure myself and do my job properly. Mr. Logan, please let me speak to... Before I could finish my sentence, a painful sound rang out very clearly. Next was some sticky sound. My heart beat fast. I felt scared and creepy with my own speculations. On the other end of the line, a creepy laugh rang out.
She didn't look at me anymore, nor did she protest. She was sleeping on the floor.
I didn't answer anymore. My hands worked quickly on the computer. I quickly dispatched the ambulance and police car to the location the man named Logan had provided. After nearly 20 minutes, police cars and ambulances arrived at the location I identified. It is the guard building of a local cemetery. After calling loudly and no one responded, the police immediately rushed in. The scene inside the room made all the police and medical staff present there freeze. On the floor is the intact body of the female guard. All of her toes and fingers were severed. Blood splattered all over the walls, floors, tables, and chairs. She lost both eyes. The mouth was sewn tightly shut. The clothes have many rough cuts. All cameras in the cemetery were stolen. 2 surveillance computer screens were also smashed. The police also could not collect any further evidence to investigate the man named Logan. The following days, I was filled with regret. I should have called the police sooner when I noticed something unusual. I heard the entire process of that pervert murdering the female security guard without being able to save her. Police are still actively looking for information about Logan. I'm also not sure if the name he called himself is accurate or not. About a week later, I'm also on night shift. On duty that day, there were many accidents and emergencies. My mind was extremely stressed. I had just rested a bit. At around 12 o'clock, the phone rang again. I regained my composure and answered the phone with a professional attitude. The other end of the line was silent for a moment, then spoke.
Do you remember me?
I immediately fell into panic because I immediately recognized that voice as Logan's. Before I could react, he continued to haunt me. He accurately described my physical characteristics and the clothes I was wearing. Even scarier was the mole on the back of my neck, which he could also see. I stood up in fear and looked around the office. Logan's loud laughter rang out from the phone. The perverted and disgusting voice made my limbs weak.
Do you want to spend a memorable night with me?